Let me show you where to mount these switches. In this episode of Aston1936.com, I'm going to continue with the install of my Aston Installations HD Infotainment System upgrade. We've been working our way across the table if you've been watching the previous episodes, and in those episodes I've shown you how to install the screen, how to put in the fiber optic bus, how to put in the power harness, and today what we're going to be moving forward on is the buttons that control the screen. So they're all going to get mounted in this center console that we removed as part of the prerequisites. And there's a whole bunch of buttons, and you might think, why are we using buttons? Well, the screen is not a touch screen, and that's not really a failing of the kit. The screen is too far away to reach. Where Aston has it mounted on the dash, you can't actually be driving the car and actually get to the screen. So you need some sort of interface that you can work the Android Auto and Apple CarPlay with your hand still on the wheel. So that's what we're going to be covering today. We're going to start with a couple of the buttons that are for the USB port and the on-off switch for the fiber optic interface. So let's go over to the bench and we'll start to talk about it. So what I'm interested in installing today is there is a USB port that is part of the kit. This is the USB port you could plug your non-Wi-Fi Android Auto Apple CarPlay device into to be talking to the system, also to get some power and other stuff. So we're going to try and find a place to install this in the center console tray. And we have two buttons we need to think about where they're going to mount. This rocker switch, if you come in here for a closer look, is an on-off switch for the MOST interface. That's the interface that controls the audio stream to the fiber optic bus. And we have a button here that will be mounted in the next episode that goes in the ashtray area that is used to toggle the input to the HD screen around. So really what we're going to be talking about today is where we mount these two things. This is probably a good time to talk about installations or custom. You can do it any way you want, it's your car. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do it for my car. Aston Installations has some suggestions depending on the model of car as well, so I'm going to mention a few of those things, and you'll want to talk to them when you buy your kit. Hey, what's the best place to put the USB port in my 2012 Vantage or my Rapide, etc. So just because I put something in a particular position doesn't mean you have to. So you know me though, I've done a lot of thinking about where I'm going to install mine. And what I want to do today is start with this MOST switch. So this is an on-off, and it turns off the fiber optic interface. And what that'll let you do is if you want to listen to the original head unit, AM, FM, or CD changer, you turn the MOST interface off in the early cars. And mine's a 2005 DB9. I think it's up to maybe 2009 or 2012. Again, check with the Aston Installation guys if you need to have this MOST switch. But since I have a 2005, I really need to have one. And I listen to the radio a fair bit. I can probably stream the radio stations I'm used to listening to, but I want to have this, fairly readily at hand. So there's two places that I think we can install this. The first I'm going to show you is the recommended one from Aston Installations, and it's going to be down on the carpet, kind of tucked away out of sight. And the place where I'm actually thinking about installing it is going to be in the center console, actually mounted in here. And my master plan though, when I start to think about this USB port too, is I'm going to try to mount both of these things in the utility tray holder here, and have them mounted low down at the back, kind of oriented like that. So when I'm sitting here in the driver's seat, I actually won't see those buttons, and I'll be able to reach in with my finger and I'll be able to flip the switch if I want to, but my passengers won't even know it's there. The USB port's going to be sitting right there. I have a fancier Samsung phone. It does wireless Android Auto, and so I won't even probably need to use the USB port, but if somebody else is using the car, I'm going to fit it anyways. Another spot where you could fit this USB port, if you didn't have to worry about the most switch, is you could put it front and center in the utility tray. You could mount it right square on the front side and have it more visible so it'd be easier to plug into. So that's not where I'm going to put mine. I'm going to want mine to be a little more invisible. Of course, that'll make it a little harder to get the USB cable in, but if you're going to be using the USB cable, I'm pretty sure you're going to hook it up once, and then you're probably just going to leave it coiled up in there. So I don't think it's going to be something I'm going to connect a million different times, so I'm going to hide mine a little bit more. So let's go over to the car now, and I'm going to show you how Aston Installations wants to work their recommendation for where you can install the most switches. So we're over here back in the passenger footwell. We've got all the carpet torn out already because we're in the middle of this process. So the place that Aston Installations is actually talking about that could work as one option is that they would hide it tied to the carpet up here just behind this seam. And so that you would know that switch is there if you needed it. It would be sort of, you know, unobtrusive. You wouldn't see it at all. And it's actually pretty easy to install it in this position. So notice this, you know, this is sort of an alignment mark, this mark here. And so what the idea is if we have the carpet pulled back, and you can see there's a little step up in the carpet here, just forward of this seam, is that you would zip tie this switch to the carpet. And the way you would do that is on this side of the carpet, you would come in and you could use this as a template. You take the switch to figure out how wide it is and about how far down you'd want it to sit. And then you could use a pencil, you can make a mark. And now you've got a spot where you want to get some holes. And then you would come in, and I'm not going to do this, but you would just not poke your finger either. Use a sharp utility blade, carefully make a cut in each carpet. And this is amazingly high quality carpet. It's fantastic. And so once you've got those two holes, then you'd come back to this side and you would take a zip tie. So I have just sort of a regular zip tie here. You would poke it through, you know, one of the holes to start with, bring it back through. So now it's, you know, both sides are sticking out on the front. Get your switch, you know, trapped into place by the zip tie. Kind of orient the on-off with the direction that you might want to have it. Maybe if you want on to be pulled towards you, you'd do it like that. And then you'd tighten up the zip tie, and now you'd have that switch tied to the carpet. Then you got to think about the wiring, and we need to get this part of the tail to come down, but you also have to get this simultaneously attached part of the tail going back, because you're going to be installing this in the ashtray area. So you would tuck the wiring down in behind the carpet, you know, when you're doing your final work. And of course, I'm just, you know, winging it here for camera, but this was essentially, you know, tuck up in here. And, you know, you could mess around just till you get it in the right, you know, that would be going that direction behind the scenes. And there you go. That's one really easy way to install it. Now, this isn't the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it what you'd probably call the hard way, because I'm me. So let's go back over to the bench and I'll show you what I'm going to do. So to install these two switches in your car, you're going to need either the easy set of tools or the complicated set of tools. If you go with the Aston Installations recommended location, you're going to need a X-Acto knife with a sharp blade and a pencil and a zip tie. So that's definitely the easy way to go. If you're going to do it the Aston 1936 way, gotta be me, you're going to need a few more things. So you'll see me making a template. So I've got some blue, you know, masking tape. I have a circle template, which is just helping me with some visual stuff that you'll see what I do with that. A pencil and a Sharpie marker just to do some of the layout work I'm going to do. To disassemble the utility tray from the center console, you need a T20 Torx screwdriver. I would use a hand screwdriver, not a power driver. An X-Acto blade. I'm going to use a pick. You could use a small flat blade screwdriver, but this pick, you'll see, is very useful for picking out some metal shavings when I'm drilling one of the holes. So you'll see me use that. I used a triangular file to make a little keyway for one of the USB port sockets. So you'll see me use that. I'm using a vernier caliper. Maybe not essential for what you're going to need to do. I was just wanting to show you the details as I worked through the project. Essential though is a step drill bit. This is a bit that goes up to like 1.1 or something like that, but I used it at least up to the 7/8 or 20 millimeter mark. So you need to have a step or drill bit up to that size. Or if you happen to have a drill index that went as large as 20 millimeters, you could do it with a drill index. I use my drill index for a pilot hole and a few step holes, so it's good to have some good sharp drill bits. You're drilling aluminum, at least it's not steel. I've got a couple of these quick grip clamps because you'll see that I'm going to clamp the utility tray down to my workbench. So these were handy, and of course you need a drill to work with the drill bits. So again, Aston Installations way, quite simple. But the Aston 1936 way, a little bit more involved, but these are pretty typical tools you'd find in your shop. So now, where I'm going to put them is in here, and the first thing I want to do is actually flip this unit over and give you a little idea of what we have to avoid when we're deciding where we're going to position them. So I'm going to position both my buttons, the USB port and the MO switch on the back side of, so now we're working upside down, right? So I'm going to be doing on the back side of this face. And there's some stuff we have to clear, right? Because I've got cables. So one of the things I had to think about is, will I be able to get the cable to turn and go someplace else afterwards without being pinched off? And what that tells me is that if we look in from the side here as well, is that I have to worry about clearing the clearance between the back of the device and running into something here. So I can't go all the way down to the middle of the utility tray wall. I'm going to have to stick a little bit up, or I'm going to have to be in deeper towards the bottom, which looks like the top, of course, because we're upside down. And then the other side as well, we've got the lighter socket here, but same issue. I should be able to, and there's a little bit of an offset on the switch for the wiring, so I'm going to put that towards the top, which is down really in this view, which will put the on towards the up of the actual in reality, which is what I wanted. And so that'll sort of fit in there pretty decently. So you have to think about the clearance of, you may have a different setup, so I wanted to show you this so you can think about it on your own car. So next up, I actually want to take this off the car. And there's two parts. There's this weird coin holder section and the utility tray, and they're actually mounted together as sort of one unit here. So everything comes apart with a T20 Torx, and I'm definitely going to do this by hand. So the first three are the bottom of the utility tray, which is just a flat plate. It's just covered in leather, so we can set that aside. So now I'm going to take off the coin holder. 3 more screws is pretty easy. And it just lifts. It'll come out eventually, so we'll set those screws aside. And then there's 3 screws for the main utility tray. 1 on the side where we're going to be working on. And then 2 more on the opposite side. So I suggest you also keep something in mind to remember the orientation. And on my car, they have written big old 1936 that this website is named after. And this is written in, if you're reading it, that's the top, that's the bottom in reality. So that's a way to keep oriented. There's the coin holder we can set aside. And we can set this whole frame aside now for the rest of the video. So now we've got a better look at this, and we can see that we want to be as far towards the bottom of, so now I've got it sitting the way it would be oriented in the car. And we want to get this switch as low as possible to clear all the ashtray assembly that's underneath. But we don't want to get too low where we're, breaking out the side of the metal or anything like that. And then I also want to figure out, sort of the OCD, get them centered left and right, make it look nice and symmetrical. So working from the inside, what I did is I've made myself a little template. Of course I did, right? You're laughing. But what I did to figure the template out is I measured the diameter of the body of the switches. And these are just shy of 19 millimeters, as it turns out, both of them are. And then I have my circle template where I have a 19 millimeter hole. And what I decided I would do is I would put some blue masking tape, which you could do the same thing, and just line the inside between the stitching seams to try and find, if I was trying to center it, I'd want to center stuff between the stitching seams. So I stretched out the tape between the seams and I lined it up with the bottom of the leather. And I was able to draw on, essentially get a working area. So then I came over to the bench. I stuck this down actually on the back of that cover. And what I determined is that I also wanted to find what's the outside clearance of the switch. So as I found here, okay, so for the MOST switch, it's a 25 millimeter circle. So I wanted the MOST switch on the left on the inside, because that's the one where I'm going to be putting my hand in and turning it on and off. So that's got a 25 millimeter outside circle and a 19 millimeter inside circle. And then the USB, I did the same thing. It's a little larger. That's just slips through, I think that's a 26 millimeter hole. No, it just goes through the 25. So that's a 25, that's a 19. I think I misspoke earlier. The MOST switch is a 23 with an inside of a 19. And all that's really doing is getting me a visual target. And then the big question is, how far up off the bottom of the box do I want to have enough clearance for both? So that number for me that I worked out is 14 millimeters. So to get the center holes, I basically came up with 14 millimeters from the bottom of the tape. And then I measured the width, which was about 58 millimeters. So I put a center mark at 29. And then I subdivided the remaining space each direction to get the center for each unit. So when I'm done, this is what it should look like with the switches mounted. The USB will be on the right-hand side, inside the car where I'm sitting, and the switch will be on the left-hand side as I'm sitting. So that's my goal. So let's put these in to take a look on both sides. So I've got the pattern drawn on the inside. I went ahead and did the same thing to the pattern on the outside, because this is where I'm actually going to be drilling from. So from this perspective, the USB port's on the right. It's and this is where the cables are going to come out, and the switch is going to be on the left. And this is going to tell me where I actually have to drill my holes and kind of keep me visually sighted for the clearance I have to maintain. So, you know, basically I should have a few millimeters of metal left underneath each of the switch bodies once I have it done. So now we're going to go over, and I haven't been able to practice this, let's go drill some holes. All right, so we've moved back to a clean bench area, and what I wanted to talk about now is that this is sort of a cast, feels like aluminum piece, and I don't want to put it in a vise to do the drilling. I also don't want to drill it freehand because if it starts to spin, I don't want to catch and tear the leather. So I'm actually going to clamp it down to a table with some soft rubber quick grips. And this will also, you may not need to do it quite like this in your shop, but this lets us get a better angle for filming. All right, so I have it firmly attached to the table, and we'll be able to see both sides of it now. So the reason I actually put the blue tape on both sides is, so to start off, I want to drill a pilot hole, and I want to see where it shows up on the other side. So I've got my really good quality sharp tip 3/32. Could be any size you want, you just want it to be a small enough one. And the cameraman can just freestyle around me. And I'm just coming in, and I'm going to go through the center of the hole. And how'd we make out on that side? Yeah, looks like we're just about dead center where I wanted it. And now we'll do the one for the most power switch. So you can see on the outside, I started out right in the middle of the holes. And on the other side, they've poked through pretty close. It's as much as I can do, sort of line up the tape. So at this point, I'm going to remove the tape because we're committed. So I came over to the bench just so you'll be able to see what I'm doing a bit better. But we have to deal with the leather now because we're about to start drilling the hole through, and I don't want the leather to get sliced up. So what I'm going to do is put a couple of little cuts into the leather, a cross mark, and I'm going to do it less than the overall diameter of the hole, and I can always make them bigger. The idea is that this will let the leather sort of peel up and make space. So, man, I've not done this on camera before, but here we go. Just cutting into my bridge of weir leather like I know what I'm doing. Now I'm realizing that I may have to do a little sideways freestyle here. You can see now the leather can basically push back as the hole comes through. So I can make sure I can flip up all the little triangles here. And I've just done sort of a quarter. You could even do eighths of a, you could put 8 cuts in it to make the flaps even thinner. So now let's head back over and do some more drilling at the bench. Well, an old engineering saying is measure with a micrometer, mark with chalk, and cut with axe. So I'm about to use a good condition step drill bit to basically work my way through the pilot hole until I've got a hole big enough to pass the USB through. And on this bit, my estimate is about where this white line is. So we're going to be stepping through probably at least half the rings. And we're going to, it's going to be a little bit of trial and error because we're going to keep drilling, and then I'm going to make sure I'm not gouging up the leather, and then I'm going to have to keep making the hole big enough until I think I can just get the switch through, and then I'm going to actually try to fold the leather in. So I've not done this before. I'm going to do one pass off camera to learn how to do it, and then the second hole I'm going to talk to you a bit more. So here we go, fingers crossed. All right, first hole successfully drilled. I think I managed to get it to work out properly, figured out some tips to share. So let me do a little monologuing as we do the second hole for the most switch. So got my pilot hole, got my cross cut in the leather on the backside. What I found is it was too hard to just start with the straight in with the step drill. So I'm just going to use a couple of the, I'm going to step up a few sizes and just use my drill kit index to get, up to a medium size hole to go with. So slow and steady, it's aluminum. So somewhere in there you're going to be having the thought, oh my God, what am I doing to my car? It'll be okay. Steady on. So I'm going to put 2 drill sizes larger. And then I went a couple drill sizes larger again. And probably while we're at this stage, maybe cameramen can take a peek over the leather just keeps pushing out of the way. The leather gets a little ragged looking, but it's going to fold back in the hole anyways, so not a big deal. So I'm going to do another double step. This is about as big as I'm going to go with the drill bit because it's going to start catching. All right. Now it's time for the cut with axe. So again, we're going to be going through almost to that white line there. So that's a lot of steps. I also found you got to keep the speed of the drill up. It cuts better when it's going faster. So hold your breath. So somewhere in here, you're going to start to wonder, well, is the hole big enough? You could just try press fitting, the piece in, but I'm still using my micrometer, my vernier caliper. So I'm at 15 millimeters, a little larger. So I still have at least 4 millimeters to go. And I'm at 19.6. So I'm going to hold up there and see if that's enough clearance to let the leather fold over the hole and also get the most switch through. So now over here at the bench, I'm going to show you another thing. We have metal filings stuck under the leather. And I can sort of feel it with my finger. There's a big chunk right there. There's little gribbly bits all the way around. So I'm going to get in here with a small pick. You could use a small screwdriver. This is all the filings I got out of the first hole. So essentially I'm just going in. I have my finger on the back side, sort of doing are there any chunks left? But yeah, there's chunks like that come out. So when you cut with an axe, you get a lot of crap. So just take your time. This is the steps where, your own patience and perseverance is what determines the quality of the install. So sitting in the car, there's the 1936. I've ruined it, but this is the way it would be sitting. So I want the most switch on this side. And so I'm going to feed the cabling harness through. First the button. And the multi-plug. Now, the switches have a keyway on them as well. I'm hoping that I won't have to cut a little slot for that keyway. That's to keep them from rotating. And I'm hoping I'll be able just to push it into the leather. So let's see if it just does a loose fit. Yeah, that's going. Feels snug, which is good. I have my there's the keyway starting to hit the leather. And I've got the one positioned up. I'm just giving it a push. Now I don't want to, if it doesn't go, I may have to make it a little thicker, the hole. Okay, so it's not going through because of the keyway. So what I'm going to do is position my switch just where I want it with the one up, and then I'm going to it's at the 90 degree, but I'm just going to make a little mark on the leather. So I'm going to give the leather a little extra cut, just so I'm not running into the leather with the tools. And then I'm going to start with something milder. I'm going to try I have a triangle file. I just need a notch. Okay, well, not knowing if that's big enough, I'm going to clean out the filings a little bit from the leather. Let's try again. There we go. So that was just enough to now let it slide in. And I'm just going to make sure my leather is sliding in with it. And that looks pretty damn decent. So now let's do the USB port on the other side. I guess you could decide if you want the blue tongue up or down. It's your choice. There's no real difference on the back side. As you're blindly hooking up your USB cable, though, you might want to have that in mind. And there we go. And look at that, just coming up to the seam on the leather. There's my center line, nice and even between them. And when it's installed in the car, you won't be able to see any of it. I'll just be able to reach my finger over and do the switch or plug in the cable. So that's pretty trick. So next, let's refit it back to the center console. All right, well, let's reconnect this to the car, and hopefully we've got our clearance to the ashtray. I'm going to bring this USB cable off to the side. So yeah, my clearance is good. Really good, actually. I'm surprised. I thought it'd be a tighter fit than that, but bring over the coin slot. And I can actually reach the screw down between them. And there we have it, 2 discreetly installed switches. So while I'm driving, I can just reach my hand over if I want to turn that on or off, or your USB cable will be tucked out of sight From the passenger and driver's perspective, you can't even tell those buttons are there. So, you know, pretty proud of that. That looks exactly like I wanted it to be. You know, you might think, oh, it'd be nicer to have it a little higher up, but there just isn't the clearance to get away with that with the ashtray system. So, and then the cables, I'll be able to route these, you know, off in different directions as I'm doing the rest of the work. So up next will be the work necessary to fit the control panels inside the ashtray area, and we'll get started on that in the next video. So hopefully this was a useful endeavor for you to watch. Down here you're going to find a link to the companion blog article where we'll have links to other useful things like maybe the tools and stuff like that. Up here will be the next video in the series, which will certainly be fitting the controls in the ashtray area. If you'd like to get automatically notified when the new videos come out, please go ahead and subscribe and click notify. And then as always, I'd love to hear your comments. Please leave those down below. Thanks for watching.